Here's a character archetype I've never yet explored on this channel. The character who goes into battle with a melee weapon in one hand and a ranged weapon in the other. A kind of hybrid, I'm ready for anything kind of character that you see fairly often in both pirate and musketeer-like settings. Well, today we're gonna build one, so I hope you'll come along for the ride. Welcome to D4. Hey everybody, so here at D4, each week I take a deep dive into one, or sometimes more, character builds for my favorite role-playing games. I like to crunch numbers about them, I like to theory craft about them, not so that I can tell you like the definitive right way or best way to play a character, but to explore one potential way to build something with the hopes of creating a character that's both really fun, but also really powerful to play. So if you also enjoy creating characters for your favorite role-playing games, or if you're just looking for ideas or tips on how to build something you're thinking about playing, or if you just really like theory crafting, then welcome home. This is where you belong, and I'm so glad you're here. So thanks for being here. My name is Colby. Right, so the musketeer, yeah? The character who's great at both close quarters combat, swordplay, right? And can pull out their ranged weapon if need be once in a while, line up a shot on a foe in the distance and dispatch them. Maybe as they're closing in or if they're trying to run away. It's a really fun concept, but the problem is it doesn't actually work with, well, muskets, or pistols at least. And how can you be a musketeer if you can't use firearms? Because, see, even pistols aren't considered light weapons in D&D, and to be dual-wielding a ranged weapon in one hand and a sword in the other, they both need to be light, right? But that's fine. Maybe you prefer the hand crossbow anyways, whether because you prefer the look and feel and like silence and lack of black powder smoke that comes with it, or because firearms don't really exist in your game world. And if we can be silent and deadly, maybe this concept makes for a great like spy or double agent type character. One who can sneak in and take out their mark, whether in close quarters or from range. Or heck, maybe you're just a pirate, because yar. Regardless, yeah, that's what we're gonna build today. Not because it's necessarily the highest damage dealer in the game, though they pack a pretty hefty punch, thank you very much, but because we can and want to. We wanna be a stealthy, skillful combatant who's ready for anything. Melee combat? Check. Ranged combat? Check. Both? Even better. And let's add a healthy heaping of scout-like utility and infiltration while we're at it to, sure, make maybe a little bit more of a fantasy-era James Bond while we're at it, shall we? I proudly present, then, D&D episode number 212, the Musketeer, the Sword and Shot, the Double Agent, the Biathlon, the Stab and Bolt, Skull and Crossbows, the Blade Gunner. That's good, but we're not using guns. Thanks as always to all the Discord server users for the fantastic suggestions. I think this time I'm just gonna go with the Blade and Bow. Huge thanks to my good friend Randall Hampton for the fantastic artwork that he put together for the build this week. He does this every week. If you would be interested in following him to check out the other stuff that he's done, or maybe to even try and commission him to create some art for your character or even your entire party, I'll put links in the video description as always on how to do so. But first, I am really excited to tell you guys about the sponsor today, Magic Spoon, because it means I have an excuse to eat some of their stuff, and that's perfect since today is a low-carb day for me. That's really good. So, most of you probably know by now, but for those who don't, here's the deal with Magic Spoon cereal. First of all, it tastes great, it really does. Second, each serving has 13 to 14 grams of protein, 0 grams of sugar, and only 4 to 5 grams of net carbs. And if you're a cereal aficionado like me, you know those are some crazy good stats for cereal. But guess what? I talked about this last time they sponsored me, but Magic Spoon does granola now. My order of it hadn't arrived in time for the last sponsorship, but since then I have been eating it all the time. It's totally my new favorite. I've always kind of loved like the crunchy, hearty, nutty cereals the best, and the new granola checks all of those boxes for me. They're packed with sunflower seeds, cashews, almonds sometimes depending on the cereal. The flavors are all amazing. I think this dark chocolate almond is my new favorite, but honey almond, mixed berry, peanut butter are also all fantastic. And yeah, with the granola, you get 13 grams of protein per serving and 0 added sugar. And it's just kind of my new go-to, whether in a bowl by itself or maybe mixed in with like some regular Magic Spoon cereal is also great. I also really like to put it in yogurt. I love it. And then of course there's the treat bars, which I actually have some of because every time I order them, my whole family just eats them. Anyways, these are also really fantastic. Anyways, these are a really nice on-the-go option. There's 11 to 12 grams of protein, a gram of sugar, only 1 to 2 net grams of carbs. They're light and yummy, come in lots of good flavors. The only problem is trying to keep your family from eating all of them. So, do yourself a favor and try out Magic Spoon. Just go to magicspoon.com/D4, or yes, you can scan the QR code that's been up there the whole time. If you would, do that so that they know I sent you. Thanks. They do offer a 100% happiness guarantee. If you order online and you don't like it, they will refund your money, no questions asked, so you've got nothing at all to lose. Oh, and don't forget the code D4 at checkout to save $5 off your order. So big thanks to Magic Spoon for sponsoring and for making my high-protein, low-carb days so much more pleasant. Okay, let's get back to the build. All right, at level 1, for our starting class, we are going to start Rogue because, as usual, if we're going to be taking Rogue levels in a build, and I want to create a character who could excel at the party's like lockpicking, trap-finding, scouty needs, right? I like to start Rogue since that gets us more skill proficiencies and most of what we need to really excel in those areas. For our species, I'm going to say let's go human for this build, though I don't consider it a must-have. I like it for, again, the additional skill proficiency and the extra origin feat we get, but you could take a different race and make it work if you like. As for our background, as always I say, take an old background and customize it, or do a custom background if you can, but if not, Wayfarer is going to work just fine for us because that gives us one of the origin feats that we want, which for this build is going to be Lucky. This gives us a number of luck points equal to our proficiency bonus that we can use to either give ourselves advantage on a d20 test or give an enemy disadvantage on an attack. And I'm a sucker for trying to find advantage on our attacks, though of course, sure, you could always save those luck points for defensive purposes, maybe especially to ensure that you succeed at an important save or even succeed at an important skill check. I appreciate the versatility. But then as a human, right, for our extra free origin feat, I think I'd probably take Magic Initiate Wizard here. This lets us learn a couple of wizard cantrips, and Message is particularly always nice as someone who might be scouting ahead, right? But then also a single first level wizard spell that we can cast once per day, and that means we would get, Find Familiar, which would let us summon a little pet owl who can also scout for us, so now our scouting ability just got a nice boost, right? But who can also, yes, potentially take the help action to grant us advantage on our first attack. And I don't talk about this all the time, but every once in a while I like to mention, yes, I appreciate that not everyone plays with familiars this way at their table, right? Rules as written, the familiar has its own initiative, and if they take the help action, they specify the enemy that they are helping against, and then the next attack against that enemy that comes in whatever turn order it comes in has advantage, right? But I also note that the vast majority of tables allow the familiar to essentially just help a chosen ally on their next attack, and so I assume that that's what we can do here. If you can't, it's not going to have a huge impact on the build. Feel free to take a different spell if you'd like. Shield spell's always good, right? Or a different feat. There are plenty of great ones to choose from. Or sure, even a different species if that makes more sense for you. For our starting ability scores, I'm going to assume that we're using the point buy method as always and say let's take a 15 dexterity and a +2 there, a 15 wisdom and a +1, and then a 14 constitution. You could swap that wisdom and constitution if you really wanted, but wisdom will be not only super important for our perception checks and wisdom saves, right, as a scout, but will actually even give a little bump to our sustained damage. More on that later. For our starting equipment, I'm going to say let's grab either some studded leather or some scale mail, which we're likely going to start using next level, potentially. Maybe not. Scale mail gives a disadvantage on stealth checks, right, for only a slightly better armor class. And eventually, once we get our dexterity capped, there's no AC benefit at all to wearing even half plate over studded leather, unless you get the medium armor master feat, I suppose. So yeah, if it were me, I'd probably prioritize stealth on this character over a slightly better armor class, but your call. As for weapons, we're going to want a scimitar or scimitar and a hand crossbow because yes, as a rogue we get weapon masteries, and we would want to take them in the scimitar for the Nick mastery, which would let us make the bonus action attack we normally get when dual wielding light weapons as part of our attack action instead of, needing to use our bonus action for it. And remember, they are no longer required for two-weapon fighting, right, to be melee weapons like it was in 2014. That's freaking awesome. And then, yes, mastery in the hand crossbow for the Vex mastery, which says that when we hit with the weapon, the next attack we make against that same enemy is made with advantage. This will be important for the little advantage chain that we're going to be trying to set up. And no one wants advantage on their attacks more than rogues, because at Rogue 1 we also get sneak attack, of course, which says that if we are attacking with ranged or finesse weapons, check, right, and have advantage on the attack, or are attacking someone next to one of our allies, check, then we can add a d6 of damage once per turn, scaling with rogue level. Nice, but I'll keep saying it, I think this needs to scale better. I've heard 1d6 per rogue level instead of every 2 rogue levels as a potential homebrew there. But I think my preferred homebrew, if you're looking to give a little bump to rogue damage, would actually be to let the sneak attack dice increase with rogue level akin to, say, the monk's martial arts die, right? Make sneak attack dice d8s at level 5 and d10s at level 11, maybe? Give me more reasons to keep taking levels in rogue, please. And of course, in that scenario, you'd only be able to trigger sneak attack once per round, I think. Anyways, I'm not going to assume that we're getting that benefit in this build, of course. As a Rogue One, we also get Thieves' Cant here, that special coded language for rogues' eyes only, right? And then, yes, we get Expertise, which lets us double our proficiency bonus for 2 skills that we are proficient in. I think if it's me on this build, I'm probably taking Perception and Stealth personally, but pick your favorite if you'd rather go with something different. You know who I would never replace with something different? My channel members and patrons. I just want to give a huge shout out and thank you to my channel members and patrons. You guys make what I do possible. Thank you. Could not do this without you. Your support means the world to me. If you are not a member or a patron, I'd love it if you would consider becoming one. There's a button down there that says join, or you can find a link to my Patreon in the video description. Follow either of those and it'll tell you about the benefits that you can get by being a member, including access to the library of write-ups that I create for each of these builds to help you recreate the build yourself a little more easily, access to the community Discord server, and even access to our live monthly Q&A hangout sessions that we do. I give all of these perks to anyone who signs up at the just silver level or higher, and I just ask that you pay what you feel like it's worth and what you think you can afford. But if you're not interested in doing that or don't feel like you can right now, that's fine. I'm really grateful that you're just here watching and liking and subscribing. Hopefully those are also great ways to support me, so thanks. Okay, at level 2, with those important rogue utility features in place, I think we need to spend some time with Ranger. So this double agent character of ours has learned the basics of infiltration and dirty fighting, sure, but it's time for them to really hone in on being able to be prepared for every situation, track their target, and stalk their mark relentlessly, anytime, anywhere, without being seen. So, as a Ranger 1, then, we get weapon masteries again, and we've already got the 2 most important to us, so go ahead and pick your favorites here, but then we also get favorite enemy. This lets us always have the Hunter's Mark spell prepared, and even lets us cast it twice per day without spending a spell slot. And you know what? As much as we all, I anyways, especially like to complain about Hunter's Mark, this is a decent little feature, and something that I think we'll actually end up making some pretty good use out of on this build. We get other spells too here, of course, at Ranger 1, and there are plenty of good ones to choose from. Absorb Elements for some resistance to elemental damage, Cure Wounds and or Goodberry for some nice healing and potential utility. Entangle is a nice AoE control option to try and restrain multiple enemies. Jump for improved move speed and gap clearing potential. What about Hail of Thorns? I don't know that I've ever talked about this spell in a build before, but you know what? It's not the worst thing ever. I mean, it's sort of a ranged Divine Smite, right? You cast it as a bonus action when you hit an enemy with a ranged weapon, and both the target and anyone standing within 5 feet of them make a dexterity save or take a d10 of piercing damage, half on a save, and it scales by a d10 every level. I'm not saying I'd use it all the time, but maybe if we have our bonus action free and or there's an enemy or 2 standing next to your target, especially if one is low on health. Anyways, might be worth keeping in your quiver, quarrel, as it were, for us, right? But at level 3, we would be a Ranger 2, and first up we get Deft Explorer. That gives us expertise in just 1 more skill instead of 2, but you know what? That's actually perfect because then we could get sleight of hand here, and I feel like that would mean we'd have expertise in the 3 most important, in my opinion, skills for any good scout, letting us stealth, spot hidden doors and traps, and now pick those locks and disarm those traps with really high reliability, and that feels awesome. We also get a fighting style at Ranger 2, and I think I would here take the 2-weapon fighting style. It's tempting to go for archery, and it's accompanying +2 to hit with ranged weapons, sure, but since we're only making some of our attacks with a ranged weapon, I think I'd rather have the ability to add my dexterity modifier to the damage I'm doing with my offhand scimitar here, right? So let's grab that. At level 4, we would be a Ranger 3, and that means we get our Ranger subclass. And we, in case you hadn't guessed it yet, are going with Gloomstalker. Gloomstalkers are awesome, and even though they might have gotten a bit of a nerf for 2024, there are still fantastic reasons to take them. As a Gloomstalker, we get 2 features. Dread Ambusher is really 3 features in one, telling us that we have 10 extra feet of move speed on the first round of combat. Nice. And then when we hit with a weapon once per turn and wisdom modifier times per day, we can add an extra 2d6 of psychic damage to that attack. When I first saw this feature and how it changed for 2024, I thought, massive nerf, only good for burst damage, but it's fairly paltry burst damage. But you know what? Changing the way I calculate DPR to take an average of damage over a 4-round combat encounter has taught me something important. Some of these, previously thought of only as burst damage options, can actually do really nice things for our sustained damage. And I think this is part of the reason why you're not seeing me do as many burst damage builds anymore, though I do have a few and I'll continue to put them out once in a while. But yeah, combined with the fact that burst damage has, I think, generally gotten a bit nerfed for 2024, and the fact that there are lots of options for, these kinds of abilities in game that do a little bit of extra damage, but several times per long rest, especially for those of us only having 1 or 2 combat encounters per day, burst damage options are sort of the new sustained damage. And I don't think I hate that, honestly. Anyways, we also are told here with this feature that we can add our wisdom modifier to our initiative rolls. That's freaking fantastic. One more reason to have prioritized wisdom over constitution back at level 1, right? And yeah, that means we've got a +6 to our initiative right now. But we're not done yet as a Gloomstalker. We also get the Umbral Sight feature, which gives us dark vision out to 60 feet, and as a human, we appreciate that very much. But better yet, we are told that when we are in darkness, we're invisible to anyone who relies on dark vision to see us in that darkness. That's like having the darkness spell with Devil Sight almost, right? So good. I hope you get to fight in sparsely lit corridors with regularity. Oh, Gloomstalkers also get some free spells at this level that means Disguise Self, which will be situationally useful, no doubt. At level 5, we would be a Ranger 4, and that means we get our first general feat. And you might think that I would take Crossbow Expert, but you know what? I don't think we really need it. It would be nice to have, sure, and I will get to it eventually, but again, you can dual wield any light weapons. They no longer have to be melee. And so I think in the name of damage, I'm going to say, let's grab the dual wielder feat instead. This lets us increase our dexterity to 18 and says that when we take the attack action and attack with a light weapon, which we are doing, right, we can make a bonus action attack with a different weapon, though this one is required to be melee. It just can't be two-handed. This is perfect. Our scimitar will do very nicely. And this means that, yes, we can take the attack action and attack with our hand crossbow, make a bonus action attack with our scimitar, right, thanks to the dual wielder feat, and then thanks to the nick property of that scimitar, make a third attack as part of our attack action. Shoot, slice, slice. Awesome. At level 6, we would be a Ranger 5, and that then would let us make 2 attacks when we take the attack action instead of 1, though, of course, for friends of our good buddy Nick, we would get 3 attacks with our action. And I should mention, for clarity's sake, there's nothing in the extra attack feature that specifies which weapon we need to use for the extra attack, right? There's nothing in the rules that would require us to make 2 attacks with our hand crossbow, and that's the main reason I decided not to get the crossbow expert feat last level. Without it, we can't make more than 1 attack with a crossbow per turn thanks to the loading property, right? Which crossbow expert says we can ignore. But I'm fine just making a single crossbow attack per round for now. But what about the ammunition property, you might be saying? That says we have to have a free hand to load our crossbow, so you're going to want that feat anyways, right? Well, keep in mind that the 2024 rules say we can draw or stow a weapon as part of making an attack with it, right? So there's no reason we couldn't start the round with our scimitar sheathed, load and fire our crossbow, then draw our scimitar, make the rest of our attacks, right? And then with our one free object interaction that we get per turn, stow our scimitar. Rinse, repeat. That would even leave a hand free in between rounds if we needed to cast a reaction spell with a somatic or material component, right? Right. We also get second level ranger spells at this level, and I'm going to say let's take the usual suspects. Aid to bolster max hit points and, give us a heal too. Restoration for a little cure-all. Pass Without Trace is amazing to get a +10 to the stealth checks of your entire party. Silence can be a great way to shut down casters especially. And then there's Summon Beast. I love this spell. It summons a little beastie companion that can make a decently strong attack, but I think I'm probably just going to kind of pass on it for this build. The spell really shines when you can upcast it to 4th level or above, granting the summoned beast multiple attacks, right? But as a 2nd level spell, the damage it deals is really only about as good as the damage that we're going to get from Hunter's Mark, both requiring concentration, and while sure, Hunter's Mark very damningly takes a bonus action to both cast and transfer when the initial target's dead, right? Summon Beast takes an action to cast, and that means it's actually going to do less overall damage, assuming a 4-round combat encounter at this level, than Hunter's Mark would, even if we're giving up our bonus action like every other round to either cast it or move it. So I think I'd grab Summon Beast for sure, and maybe use it if you can get it off before combat breaks out. Don't forget, it does last an hour, so there's a decent chance that we could be starting combat with the beast already summoned. But when I crunch numbers, I'm just going to assume that we're using Hunter's Mark here. And speaking of, it's time for our first damage report. Okay. Here's what I think combat will ideally look like for us at this level. On round 1, we're going to cast Hunter's Mark with our bonus action, take a crossbow shot at our target, then run up and make a couple of slices with our scimitar, right? I'll assume that our familiar is giving us advantage on the first attack, and then thanks to the hand crossbow's Vex, if we hit with it, we'll have advantage on our first scimitar attack. And then we could potentially use a luck point to give us advantage on the third, meaning that we would have advantage every time. I appreciate that if we miss with our hand crossbow, unlikely though it would be with advantage, still possible, it would break the chain as it were. But the math is too big of a pain to work that in, so I'm just going to assume that we've always got advantage except for on rounds 2 and 4 on that last scimitar attack, or we're going to run out of luck points. Adjust expectations accordingly, especially if you're fighting really high AC enemies and having lots of combat encounters every day, right? Now, the first time that we hit, we're going to be adding a d6 of sneak attack damage every round. And also on rounds 2 and 4, I'm going to assume that our bonus action is free, letting us make yet another scimitar attack on the enemy. But on rounds 1 and 2, right, I'm assuming we gotta use that bonus action to cast Hunter's Mark or transfer it to someone else, meaning we'll only be getting that bonus action attack from dual wielder half of the time. For that reason, and also because, as I'm sure you're thinking, making hand crossbow attacks if any enemy, whether they're our target or not, right, is within 5 feet of us, is normally made with disadvantage, you really might want to have grabbed Crossbow Expert at level 4 to prohibit that disadvantage, right? Again, lots of reasons for taking that feat. Crunching numbers in a lab and beholden to the spreadsheet, I'm going to assume that we don't have to worry about disadvantage, and that will actually be even easier to assume in a couple more levels, so bear with me. Finally, don't forget that 3 times per day now we can add 2d6 more damage from Dread Ambusher, right? So I'm going to assume that we're spending all of those uses here as well on rounds 1 through 3. Anyways, with all of those assumptions, on rounds when we can be firing on all cylinders, we'll be doing 11d6 plus 16 damage. Not bad, musketeer. And thus, against enemies with a 10 armor class averaged over 4 rounds, right? We would do 49 damage per round, and against a 15 AC, we would average 44 DPR. And wait, holy crap. That's better than almost any 2024 DPR build I've done to date at this level. Did I say this build wasn't going to be like one of the hardest hitting builds ever? I really need to stop writing those preambles before I crunch the numbers. I mean, yeah, of course. We are burning a lot of resources to get to this place, right? But I kind of do that on all of my builds, so I'm not apologizing. I definitely wasn't anticipating things hitting quite this hard at this level, not gonna lie. And considering how much utility and even support that we're bringing to the table as well, dang. For those low-level campaigns especially, this thing is a beast. But don't forget, we are a rogue and a ranger, right? Can we keep up, or is our relatively poor scaling gonna bring us down? Let's find out. At level 7, with extra attack and second level ranger spells, security, yeah, I think it's time to get back to rogue, and you very well may have wanted to just take a few levels in rogue before multi-classing at all. We'll discuss in a minute, but at rogue 2, we'll get cunning action, which lets us hide, dash, or disengage as a bonus action instead of an action. Very handy. And then at level 8, we would be a rogue 3, and that means first up we get steady aim, which says that we can use our bonus action to give ourselves advantage on our next attack only if we haven't moved, and promise not to move for the rest of the turn. It's painful, but sometimes worth it. And then, yes, we get our rogue subclass. And while on the one hand, I kind of feel like, as is so often the case with rogues, you could kind of PYF here, pick your favorite subclass, and really make just about anything work. Arcane Trickster is always great because, yeah, more spells. An Assassin is kind of nice for a little more burst damage and even a better initiative. Plus, I mean, doesn't it say somewhere that if you're going to multi-class Gloomstalker with Rogue, it has to be an Assassin? Let me just check my player's handbook here. No, that's not written in the PHB anyways. Okay, well, if it really doesn't say that, then I think for my money, for this build, I gotta go Swashbuckler. I mean, come on. If we're a sword and shot kind of character, whether we fancy ourselves a pirate or a double agent or a musketeer, that just screams Swashbuckler, doesn't it? If you can't use older subclasses at your table, then pick something else. But for the rest of us, we're freaking Inigo Montoya. You killed my father, prepare to die. As a Swashbuckler, then, we get 2 features, and they're both great. First up, Fancy Footwork says that if we make a melee attack against an enemy, check, then they can't take opportunity attacks against us for the rest of our turn. This is especially handy for those of us without the crossbow expert feat, right? Meaning we could, if someone's all up in our business, make our nick attack scimitar slice first, right? Back away without fear of repercussion and shoot our shot without disadvantage. That's appreciated and might again be a reason enough to beeline for Rogue 3 before taking Ranger levels. Or you could just get Crossbow Expert already, jeez. But then we also get Rakish Audacity here, which gives us a bonus to our initiative equal to our Charisma modifier. Dang it, I wish I had the points to give ourselves a higher Charisma. I guess you could go with a 12 Constitution or a 14 Wisdom, but now we're already getting a Wisdom bonus to our initiative right there. That just makes me kind of sad that we can't really take advantage of this. Anyways, we're also told here, more importantly, that we can also trigger Sneak Attack if we're within 5 feet of the enemy and no one else is around, right? Or whether we have advantage or not. So we're just going like mano a mano. Not bad if we can't get advantage otherwise, but I'm not too worried about not being able to get Sneak Attack off on this build, right? Speaking of, don't forget, our sneak attack does jump up to 2d6 per turn now. At level 9, we would be Rogue 4, and that means we get another feat, and okay, fine, let's grab Crossbow Expert. And yeah, fine, you might really have wanted to do this earlier, but even though it won't necessarily show up for us as a benefit in the spreadsheets, right, especially since it's a half feat and it will only raise our dexterity to 19, it's such a great quality of life improvement that it will often benefit us in ways that like working in a lab doesn't show, right? We can ignore loading and still load ammo if we don't have a free hand. Maybe we've just got bolts strapped to our leg and we can kind of just do one of those, actions. I don't know. But also, being within 5 feet of an enemy doesn't give us disadvantage on our crossbow attacks, and we could even enjoy the ability score modifier in damage if we were dual wielding hand crossbows now, which we aren't, but I still have that build on my to-do list, don't worry. Okay, at level 9, it is time for our next damage report. Since last check, we have added another d6 to our sneak attack damage, and that's about it. I guess we now have enough luck points to potentially use one every round, too. That's something. Don't get me wrong, we've done a lot to really improve our quality of life, making it easier than ever to get all of our attacks off without suffering disadvantage, even letting us make 2 ranged attacks on our turn now if we wanted. And yeah, we should do that because of Vex on the hand crossbow, right? Meaning we could crossbow attack, nick, scimitar, crossbow, then bonus action scimitar, enjoying advantage on every swing thanks to our familiar and luck points. But yeah, as I hinted at earlier, the scaling is a little rough here. So on average, over 4-round combat against enemies with a 10 armor class here, we would be doing 54 damage per round, and against a 16, it would be 50 DPR. Yikes. I knew it wasn't going to be the hardest hitting build of all time. Okay, yeah, compared to other DPR builds to date at this level, we're, kind of bottom half of tier 1 now. We had a nice little cushion there to keep us in tier 1. And yeah, investing into Rogue can be kind of painful damage-wise, but it does get at least some scaling and gets a ton of really great useful utility and survivability and soon debuffing potential too. Plus, it's important for character concept, I think, so let's stick with it and see where we get to from here. At level 10, we would be a Rogue 5, and that means we get Uncanny Dodge, which says that we can use our reaction to have an attack's damage against us. Can be a real lifesaver and nice defensive option, no question. And then we get the new Cunning Strike. Is it still new? Been almost a year since I did that Assassin Rogue expose video, right? I don't know. 2024 stuff still feels new to me. Anyways, Cunning Strike lets us sacrifice a d6 of our sneak attack damage when we apply it to do one of 3 things. Poison our enemy on a failed Constitution save, solid. Trip them prone if they are large or smaller on a failed Dexterity save. And hey, now that we don't have disadvantage on crossbow attacks within 5 feet, this is not a bad use of a d6 of sneak attack at all, especially if we're running low on luck points or our familiar got taken out, right? Since we'd have advantage on all attacks against a prone enemy as long as we were within 5 feet, whether we're making it with a crossbow or a scimitar. Finally, we can also withdraw here for a d6 of sneak attack damage, right? Letting us immediately move up to half our speed without provoking an opportunity attack, which, yeah, as a swashbuckler and with cunning action, is hard to imagine ever needing. But speaking of sneak attack, don't forget, it gets a bump up to 3d6 at this level. At level 11, we would be a Rogue 6, and that means we get another round of expertise for 2 more skills that we can gain expertise in, giving us 5 total now. And I mean, yeah, go ahead and PYF. Maybe you want acrobatics, or maybe investigation, or sure, persuasion, so you can be a half-decent face now, even with your dumped charisma. You're a swashbuckler. You gotta have some charm, right? But at level 12, we would be a Rogue 7, which gives us evasion, letting us take no damage on a successful dexterity save against fireballs and things like them, and only half damage if we fail the save, which is awesome. And then, yeah, the amazing, incredible, reliable talent, which says that when we make an ability check with one of our skill or tool proficiencies, anything we roll lower than a 10 just counts as a 10, meaning we'll probably never fail a check that we are proficient in again, especially if it's one that we've got expertise in, right? Also, sneak attack gets a bump to 4d6 here. At level 13, we would be a Rogue 8, meaning that we get another feat, and we need 1 more dexterity half feat. So sure, you could grab Piercer for a teeny damage bump, even though it's kind of bad, or maybe medium armor master, especially if you've got like some mithril half plate that would not give you disadvantage on stealth checks, or skulker maybe, or sharpshooter, better yet, right? The range on the hand crossbow isn't huge. Having sharpshooter would be nice. Also to, not have to worry about half cover and 3/4 cover. I think, though, my favorite option here would probably be Mage Slayer. I am so in love with this feat. It takes our dexterity to 20, finally, and then says if we hit an enemy who is concentrating, they have disadvantage on their concentration checks, and we're making lots of attacks, so that's fantastic, right? They're probably going to fail that concentration check over if we hit them with all of our hits on our turn. Plus, it says if we fail an intelligence, wisdom, or charisma save, we can just succeed instead. Once per short rest even. Legendary resistance for the win. Okay, so at level 13, it's time for our next damage report. Since last check, we have bumped our sneak attack by a couple of d6, capped our dexterity, and in typically roguish fashion, added a lot of great utility, survivability, and dirty fighting techniques to our arsenal. But on average, here against enemies with a 10 armor class, we would do 65 damage per round. And against a 17 AC, it would be 62 DPR. And okay, that's a little bit better scaling than last time, though Admittedly, that was a low bar. At this level, compared to other DPR builds to date, that puts us more like middle of tier 2 by comparison. Hashtag rogue life. Still, we bring so much more to the table than just damage, and the damage is still solid. So let's bring it down the home stretch. At level 14, we would be a rogue 9, and as a swashbuckler, we get panache. And this is just not a good feature. Wizards of the Coast, give us an updated swashbuckler, please. This feature says that we can take an action, yes, our entire action, to make a persuasion check contested by a creature's insight check as long as they can see us, and we share a language, and if we succeed and they're hostile, we basically stick a soft taunt on them for 1 minute where they have disadvantage on attacks against anyone but us. Unless one of our allies hurts it, or we get 60 feet away from each other. If they're not hostile, they're charmed and they think that we're friends. Yeah, we waited 6 levels for that. I have thought so many times about trying to build a swashbuckler tank around this feature. Maybe with a warlock dip for like charisma-based attacks. But yeah, having to wait till level 9 for it and having it cost our whole action is just super painful. Admittedly, with reliable talent now, and if we took expertise, I mean, we could fairly reliably get it to work, but why would we? Sorry, swashy tank. Maybe one day. I'm sure we'll get some social utility out of it though, and that's not nothing. And don't forget that at this level, sneak attack goes up to 5d6. At level 15, we would be a rogue 10, and that means we get another feat, right? At 10, rogues get that bonus feat. That's nice. And I'm pretty confident that I would just want to bump wisdom here. It would be great for our wisdom saving throws, for our wisdom-based skill checks, and would even let us use our dread ambusher feat 1 more time per day, meaning we could finally get it every round on a 4-round combat encounter potentially. So it's not a huge damage bump, but we get so much out of a solid wisdom score that I think that's the route I would go. At level 16, we would be a rogue 11, and that means we get improved cunning strike, which just says that we can use 2 different cunning strike effects at the same time if we want, though we have to pay the d6 cost for each of them if we did. It's kind of cool. I mean, if we wanted to poison and trip or withdraw, right? But I wish that they would have maybe given us the level 14 devious strikes here instead, saving improved cunning strike for level 14 when we had more and better options. Or at the very least, maybe at this level let us ignore the cost of one of the uses of Cunning Strike here and then just add a second one at the regular cost if we wanted. It's just kind of a little bit underwhelming as a feature to me otherwise. We do get another bump to our sneak attack here though, taking it to 6d6. And then at level 17, I think I'd probably take a single level of fighter. Wait, what? Instead of starting Fighter 1 like you always do, you're gonna end at Fighter 1 at level 17? What the crap is wrong with you? I know, it's a small and mostly unnecessary thing. With an eye to the spreadsheet, we don't get a lot offensively out of Rogue 12. I mean, another feat is always nice, and sure, grab Resilient Wisdom or any other potential great feat here, or just cap your wisdom, right? Or whatever. But none of that is going to add damage for us, and our scaling is so bad. So let's grab a fighter level so that we can get a second fighting style so that we can finally grab archery that I wished I could have had way back at the beginning. It's a +2 to hit with ranged weapons only, so it really doesn't do a ton for us here, but it will be nice against those hard to hit targets. Getting more weapon masteries and second wind for a little heal once in a while wouldn't be bad either, right? And sure, you could continue on in fighter here and grab a nice subclass like Battle Master, to say nothing of the benefits of Action Surge. A fighter dip is not a no-brainer here, but it's not the worst idea either. Everyone can benefit from fighter. The bacon of D&D. Ah, Monty. Anyways, this brings us to our final damage report. Since last check, we've added a couple more d6s to sneak attack, bumped our wisdom for another use of dread ambusher, added a +2 to hit to our crossbow attacks only, and picked up a little bit more utility and survivability. And thus, on average against enemies with 10 armor class, we would do 75 damage per round, and against an 18, it would be 73 DPR, which would land us, yes, near the bottom of tier 2 when compared with other sustained damage builds that I've done to date at this level, but chock full of so much great utility and skill and survivability and, most importantly, flavor. So, Do I have some final thoughts? Of course I do. The tier score for this build, if you take the damage they do at each of the 4 damage reports over all of the armor classes that we calculate for and just average it into one big number, we end up with a 53, which puts us almost at the very top of tier 2, right now anyways, second only to that other really fun and powerful rogue build, rogue cleric build that is, the Holy Blade. And you know what though, this is pretty fantastic to be near the top of tier 2, right? And especially when you consider how hard we were hitting kind of in the early and kind of mid game, right? Where most of us play most of the time. This might be one of the strongest builds ever when you throw in everything they bring to the table in addition to the damage. Several of you have asked me to start weighing damage to favor earlier levels. I like the idea, and I appreciate why you'd want to see it that way, but too many people play at higher tiers of play, even if it's just for a one-shot. And I think, and I hope, that Wizards of the Coast is making a concerted effort to make higher tier play a little more balanced and fun, and even releasing a little more content for it. But if I did do that and kind of weighted the earlier levels when I'm calculating, you know, their tier score or whatever, this build would be comfortably in tier 1, no question. And again, it's not all about damage. How cool is this build? They would make an incredible pirate or musketeer or spy, right? Infiltrating, tracking, and stalking their target, comfortable in close quarters or sniping their target from range. This character brings a ton of versatility and so much cool flavor. And I certainly hope that you get to enjoy playing them someday. And if you do, please come back and let me know about it. Nothing gives me more joy than hearing stories about my children in the wild. But anyways, that's the build for the week. I love you guys. Thank you for all that you do for me and for the channel. It means so much. I hope that you have a fantastic day and a really great week. And if you don't, I really hope that you won't give up and that you hang in there. I hope that you'll do good and be kind and that I see you again very soon. But until then, take care. Bye. All last night it stormed, woke me up at 2, 3, and 4. I reached out for you, Genevieve, it's true, I have no doubt. I've worked this one out. And I can't be good, can't see far, I just watch the fog burn off the water. I know I've sung some girly man songs before in the outtakes. That one's one of my favorites. It's called Genevieve. It was my second daughter's favorite when she was little. I used to sing it to her when I'd put her to bed, and for some reason it seemed to be the one that would calm her down when others wouldn't. So I don't know, maybe it'll have the same effect for you. Check out Girly Man. They're not together anymore. They've been broken up forever, and they were always kind of just like a little indie trio. But man, they make some great, like, kind of folky pop music. That's just gorgeous and haunting. And that song's off their second album. So, yeah, give them a try. Or other things. You think after 4 years, I'd know what I'm supposed to say at the beginning of my videos. For the fantastic suggestions, wow, say new features, and they are both great. I'm so subconscious about my both. Sometimes I just say it to spite you. And then some bolethy. All right, let's do that over. First up, fancy. Oh, Both. Okay. Shoot, I can't say this anymore. Okay. A swashbuckler.